Braxcast time once again. This is the 21st episode of this podcast, and we're going to be covering Rippaverse Day. So July 11th, 2022 is when the Rippaverse launches with Isom #1. So you have that campaign, makes multi-millions. It really establishes Rippaverse as a brand, and it starts this really interesting comic book universe that's still going on and just getting started, only 2 years into this. So it's really exciting to see it go from the start, because I was there from the start, knew about the Rippaverse before Isom #1 was, ever a thing. And I've been following it ever since. So it's been really interesting to see it grow from absolutely nothing to what it is today, and to commemorate the fact that that's happened, and that you have this fan base and community that's formed around the Rippaverse. We have Rippaverse Day. That's now going to be July 11th, and this past July 11th, so it's just this week. I'm filming this and releasing this on the 13th of July. Came about. We had a collection with a bunch of items from previous campaigns that were previously locked in the vault. Came out for just one day, so if you knew about that sale, hopefully got in where you fit in. A lot of people did. There was over $50,000 in sales for the Rippaverse Day, which is always really nice to see the fans being enthusiastic about stuff like this. But there was a lot of content that was released on social media to commemorate Rippaverse Day. So of course we'll be going over that, and we'll also go into the questions of the day. And now with the Rippaverse going from being nothing that nothing. Didn't know about Isom #1. It was just Rippa going on for Canon's sake, saying, hey, I'm doing a comic book thing. It's going to be, I have aspirations to compete with Marvel and DC. It's coming. And then Isom #1 comes, and it becomes this multi-million-dollar campaign. And now you've got $10 million in sales. They're doing paid advertisements. They're every day getting closer and closer to really breaking out into the mainstream. And with that being the case, more people are going to be like, hey, what is the Rippaverse? And you have someone ask you, what's the Rippaverse? What's this all about? What is your Rippaverse elevator pitch? So mine is really that this is a comic book universe for comic book readers, right? So you have this really interesting comic book universe, and that's really what the foundation is. And then everything else stems from that, and that is the mindset that the company has. They're executing on it. They're using the profits from the sales and everything back into the business to make it more of a legitimate publishing company. I really do want them to get to a book a month. I think that's going to really cement their status as a comic book publisher, and that's really going to give them the true, okay, once we're releasing a book every month, there's enough content for the readers that we can really do big adaptations. Of course, it'll be a well-oiled enough machine that's got enough in the coffers to really fund and bankroll these big adaptations. Talking, like bigger games, long-form animation projects, even some live-action stuff as well. So that's really what the foundation of the Rippaverse is, and that's really what will draw you in if you like reading comic books. And then the other thing with the Rippaverse is that you have the ability to get in on the ground floor, right? With these long-standing universes, Marvel, DC, other stuff, the character's been rebooted, been through so many storylines that it's a bit daunting. With the Rippaverse, it's new, it's fresh, it's really easy to get started with the series, and this is going to become less of the case, once, Isom and Yaira and Alpha Core are dozens of issues in. It's going to be a bit intimidating, like it is for One Piece, like, oh, there's 1,000 chapters. It makes it a bit intimidating, but at least you'll know where to start, and you don't necessarily have to read everything to get everything. You can start reading Isom 1 and go on and have a sensible story. The same thing goes with Yaira #1, Alpha Core #1, and there's plenty of things to pique your interest in this universe. And then wherever you start, you'll know where to start. That's the other big thing with the Rippaverse, and that's really what interests me as well, in terms of that being like that American comic book style of storytelling, where where it's actually starting, and the continuity of it actually matters. But that is my elevator pitch. Maybe a little bit long-winded for an elevator pitch, but it is there nonetheless. And next we're going into, what are your expectations for the SSWL? So SSWL is the in-universe wrestling league for the Rippaverse. I think it's like Southern State Wrestling League. I'm not sure if we know the exact acronym for SSWL, but it's an in-universe wrestling league. It has its most amount of, I guess, time given to it in Isom #2, because you have Larry Shungite, who is in an SSWL match, and then Lincoln Usubusio turns on the TV, and the story progresses from there. Of course, Larry Shungite's become a little bit of I would say, a meme in the Rippaverse community. We don't know much about him, but he's an interesting character. Nonetheless, people want to know more about him. People want to know more about the SSWL. Are there XSEPs in the SSWL? How popular is it? Is it, a thing outside of Texas? These are all questions people want answered. And also, there are people who are just genuine fans of wrestling. Who grew up watching WWF and WWE. In the 90s, early 2000s. Still to today, WrestleMania is still a pretty big event. So people like wrestling, and people want like a comic book universe version of wrestling. That's not necessarily me. What interests me more about the SSWL are the world-building implications for the Rippaverse. So Cedric Gaucho designs superhero suits for XSEPs in Taylorsville, and he did work for the SSWL. So having a book or more coverage on the SSWL will give us more insight into Cedric Gaucho, and by that we'll get more insight into the Rippaverse as a whole. And that's my biggest expectation for the SSWL, is learning more about Cedric Gaucho. Like, why did he start working for the SSWL in the first place, and why did he leave? I think that's going to be a really interesting storyline, an intensely interesting one. And then the second expectation I have for the SSWL, here's a little bit of campaign lore, if you didn't know. When the Isom #1 campaign was going on, and it was the massive success that it was, made like $3.7 million. There was the highest tier you could get, and this was to be canonized in Rippaverse. It was like $5,000. You had to be a real baller to go and drop that kind of money, but you get canonized in Rippaverse for that amount of money. And all those spots sold out, and I'm thinking that Larry Shungite or someone else in the SSWL is one of those people who was canonized in the Rippaverse. Now, could I be wrong? Maybe, but that's my theory, is that Larry Shungite's one of those canonized members in the Rippaverse, or will be introduced to those characters through the SSWL. So those are my expectations for the SSWL. But the biggest takeaway with the SSWL is going to be really world building for the Rippaverse, especially on this non-XSEP side for a lot of it, I imagine, and then of course with the XSEP side through Cedric Gaucho, because he runs Taylorville and he makes suits for XSEPs. But we're going to go into the comic book pages that were released on social media for Rippaverse Day. So you had a bunch of the creative staff for the Rippaverse team make these one-page stories, and I'm going to go through all 5 of them here because I think they're really well done. Ken White drew I think basically all of these, or most of them. I think, yeah, Igor Shakal drew one. But this first one has Blood Roof fighting Shadron. She's using her blood to deflect his punch. It looks really cool. And he says, how about a little help here, fellas? And you got Igor, Marcos, and Cannon basically hopping in. More blood, more monsters. You got it, Sydney. So this is just a really action-packed one. You've got the background, reminds me of the fight between Santuan and Isom #1. I should have brought... it's upstairs. I should have had it to reference, but it's not super necessary. And it's just makes things a little bit more of a struggle when I try to have 2 things shown side by side. But we're going into the next one. This is by the Saska sisters, Ken White and Marcos Martin. And this is basically Rippaverse appearing at a con. And not only do you have Eric July there and a bunch of fans there. You got Santuan, you got Larry Shungite. I'm seeing the Salvage. You got Valadon here, or that is Valadon. Ingrid Valdez. I believe they're here to see you. It's Isom and Eric saying the same thing, which is fun to see. You got Darren Fontano and Santon there. You've got it's hard to see. Let's see if I can. Yep, if you can see right here. You've got a woman wearing some Yaira booty shorts. So that was the $5 million, I think, benchmark. If they reached $5 million for the Yaira #1 campaign, we didn't. We got like $1.5 million. We would have gotten those Yaira shorts, which Is that like the most exciting benchmark for $5 million? No, but it's still a pretty cool thing that they're teasing that, and that's a piece of merch that I think people definitely want, or some Yaira shorts, basically Yaira anything. People love Yaira, and I'm definitely included in that. So this is a dramatized warehouse scene by the Sasco sisters and Marcos Rios. Basically, Brian Solari carrying Bruce's order, and you've got the pigeons and the drones flying it out. You got Gooding there implying that he made them. You got the Sascos directing drone traffic. So this is a really fun scene. Got the little steroid hamsters there as well. So there's a lot of references to stuff, which I always love to see, that they're in on the jokes that the community makes, and they lean into it. That's how you know the creatives and the people behind this actually care about the community, is when they lean into the jokes that the community makes, right? And you've got Bruce's orders. I think Bruce, he's I don't know Bruce. He's on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. And he's probably the one guy who's bought more Rippaverse merch than me. So that's why Brian's got a hard time getting all of his stuff out, because he's basically ordered the entire warehouse every time they release something new. So we've got this one by the Saska sisters and Igor Shankl. It's going over the Horsemen. And this honestly is pretty interesting because it gives us some insight into the story of the Horsemen. So of course, Horsemen, after Gooding, is going to be the next book on the Rippaverse release schedule, slated to come out this summer. So by before the end of September, we'll have the Horsemen's pre-order window. It's probably going to be a collection similar to Gooding, with a similar amount of stuff, which is going to be really fun to see. Just fun to read this book, because this is by the same team that did Alpha Core, Chuck Dixon writing, Joe Bennett doing the penciling, and that was a great book to read. I've reviewed it on the Substack, Overland Publishing. If you want to read that review, love the Alpha Core, most likely going to love Horsemen. And I love this little comic, because you've got Chuck Dixon and Joe Bennett basically planning out a page. It's like, what do you think, Horse? You got enough weapons for you? I don't know. I think I like a few more. Hector, why is the door locked? You have a date in there. So Hector is I forget his last name. I read it on the website. So when I did episode, I believe 19, I went through the Horseman's character page on the website, and his real name is Hector. So that's his real name, and I guess he's a married man living in suburbia. And you've got Joe Bennett and you've got Chuck Dixon saying, he needs more weapons. And he's, of course, I don't know, Chuck. I think he just needs a few more, because he needs more weapons. So he's definitely a ballistics guy, which is really interesting to see. I think he was past military, and that's why he has that ballistics experience and desire to have more ballistics. So I really like this one. It does give us some insight into the character of the Horseman. But of course, once, we get the book in our hands and we can read it and chew through all those pages, we'll know much more about the Horseman. Of course, I will be reviewing it and covering it on this channel. So, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Especially if you're watching on YouTube. If you're not subscribed, subscribe. And if you are watching this on YouTube and you are subscribed to my YouTube, but not my Substack, be sure to do that as well, because I will always be on Substack. But whether or not I will always be on YouTube is really just a matter of when they feel like banning my channel. But anyway, not to get into the negatives, we're going through this last little comic page by the Saska sisters and Marcos Rios again. So this is Yaira saying that her 3D assets need to be bigger. They need to jump out at the reader. So with Yaira number 1, you have this one panel, and again, it would be nice to bring it out and reference it, but I do these things on the fly. You have this one panel where it's her as Sally Rodell. She's in that business suit. She's got the pencil skirt. She's got the blazer that's buttoned up, and it looks like that button's really struggling to contain the 3D assets back. And this is really just about that. So of course, Yaira's got a very, I would say, feminine figure. Of course, she's also massive. She's 6'3". She's 215 pounds. So she's got, a very a really good body composition in terms of just being like a complete warrior woman. And then of course, it's not like she's like, brutish, she still has that feminine figure as well, which is a a really nice character design. I absolutely love to see it. And of course, any bigger you want to have problems for 3D assets get any bigger. I'm trying to be at least PG-13, right? And then of course you've got the Skaskos saying, you guys, the Skaskos telling Steffi Martinez, you guys ever going to write something good happening to me or what? And they're like, yeah, no. So if you don't know about Stefania Martinez, she gets the same powers as Yaira #1, and then once that happens, she has all these really bad events ensue with her. But I don't want to get too into that. If you haven't read Yaira #1, I don't want to get into spoiler territory there too much. That's all I'll say about that. But that is really all I have to say about Rippaverse Day. It was a fantastic event. Over $50,000 in sales. You got a second chance for campaign items that were only available for the campaign. And if you got into the Rippaverse after Isom #1, which a lot of people did, there was stuff from that first campaign that launched Rippaverse that new fans had a chance to get, which was always awesome to see. And then, of course, you just had the community coming around with these, comic book panels and just, being excited for the Rippaverse. And that's why I love the Rippaverse so much, is because it's something, there is genuine enthusiasm. People know that the creators of the Rippaverse and the people who work for it actually care about the company. And of course, it's why I do Braxcast, is because there's a lot of investment I have in the Rippaverse, and every book they release, every time they do stuff like this, it just keeps me invested in wanting to do more Rippaverse stuff. And hopefully it does for you as well. I'll be covering the Rippaverse as it becomes even more of a thing, as we get more Rippaverse days under our belt and more books for us to read as well. So be sure to, keep following the Braxcast for all that stuff. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. Thank you for tuning in to the Braxcast. Be sure to like, comment, follow, and subscribe to keep up with the Rippaverse.